over 50 miles away and carries a briefcase.
There you go. 50 miles in a briefcase, you get yourself an expert. I'm not an expert. What I can do for you is answer questions when I know the answers or find the answers through many of the connections that I have available. I want to do two things tonight. The first is to talk a little bit, very briefly, about mitigation. I've spoken to some of you. Some of you have, if not all of you, have received email correspondence from me regarding this mitigation planning process that we're about to enter. Yes? No? This is interactive, folks. You've seen that? Today, the application was sent to Albany several days in advance of the deadline. I've been assured by Albany that that application will be approved, and the funding package that we've submitted will also be approved for the amount that we've asked for. A little bit about how this program is going to work is that the federal government will not reimburse for any of the dollars spent until the plan is submitted in draft form. When it is submitted in draft form, they're going to submit, or they're going to reimburse us for 90% of the cost incurred up to that particular point. So there's a fairly significant outlay of money in the beginning of this whole process. For the communities that have expressed an interest, and it's basically everyone in the county, it's not a huge issue because the contribution can be services in kind. So a professional engineer's time towards looking at particular projects, or clerical staff, or typists, members of your community boards, whether it's town, village, or city, attending meetings, their time is all goes towards the offset for whatever the cost of the project is. So it's going to be a long-lived or long-term project. It's not something short. It'll probably take us the better part of 14 to 18 months to complete the whole project. But when we get all done, you'll have a plan that you can use that's going to be in effect for 5 years and afford you the opportunity to get some federal dollars to apply towards mitigation projects that otherwise would probably not be touched because everyone's budgets simply aren't strong enough to support that kind of work. Okay? Questions? All right, see you tomorrow. All right, let's see if I can get this thing to work here. I was asked to talk a little bit about Executive Law 2B. Everyone here familiar with Executive Law 2B?
No.
No.
We're going to be doing outreach throughout the year and next year, Ken. See that.
Okay.
There'll be a test at the end, so very.
All right. Very briefly, Executive Law 2B is a law within state government that essentially gives you as supervisors or mayors the authority to carry out certain duties and responsibilities in relation to emergency management. Okay? Over the last 18 months, there have been some significant changes to that law that will directly impact how you operate. This is the law that allows you to declare a state of emergency. This is also the law that allows you to issue executive orders. I mentioned both of those up front because it's critical on how you accomplish that task. You can't write an emergency order without a declaration. It means nothing if you do. Okay? There's a lot of other things in here, but we'll try to get all the pieces that we need to get you up to speed. So the first thing that's been changed in Executive Law 2B is the formal recognition of what's known as IMTs, or Incident Management Teams. Incident Management Teams are basically a group of people trained in ICS. How many people know ICS? We need to see a lot more hands.
Well, they know that more than the 2B, so that's progress.
So we have two topics to work on, 2B and ICS. Right? ICS is Incident Command System. That's how we operate. That's how you as local government should be operating when you have some kind of an emergency situation in your jurisdiction. It's what makes the system work, Incident Command. So what the state has done is taken a number of people from different agencies, primarily state agencies, but also some local agencies like larger fire departments and police departments, and form them into response teams that will come to a particular jurisdiction to support your response, not take over. Support your response. Now, when we talk about disasters, how long does a disaster last?
However.
5 hours? 5 days? 10 days? How long can your staff continue to function at 100% before they need to go home and get some kind of rest? This is the type of support that the state has developed that can come in and assist your local governments or us at the county level to support whatever the response is to the event. New York State used 26 different IMAT teams from around the country to support the response to both Irene and Lee last summer. So it's a valuable tool. It works really well. So what this particular change to Section 20, Paragraph 2 is, it formally recognizes these teams and affords them the liability protections that previously did not exist. Wrong way. It also has a change to the Disaster Preparedness Commission that allows a temporary agency to be formed to allow that IMT to come into your community and use your resources to address whatever the problem may be. That did not exist in the past as well. And again, the bottom line here is it covers their immunities and protections. Changes to the DPC. Anyone heard of DPC? Disaster Preparedness Commission. It's 23 member agencies and a couple of VOADs. VOAD, anyone know what VOAD is? There's a lot of questions here. VOAD is volunteer organizations active in disaster. One of the examples is Red Cross. It's the 23 member, actually it's 25 member agencies now, plus the Red Cross at the state that as a commission address all issues related to emergency management. Every agency at the state level that you think would have some kind of response or recovery role is part of this particular organization. They brought that up to current terminology and eliminated words that simply do not fit any longer, like civil defense. It's been replaced with emergency management. They've added a couple other agencies, for instance, the Office of People, Developmental Disabilities. They've been added previously, they were not part of this group. Mutual aid, this is an important one. How many people here have mutual aid agreements with your neighboring municipality? Formal. Does it say how you get reimbursed? Does it say who offers liability protection to your employees? Who covers their salaries? Who buys material? Who replaces damaged equipment? Does your mutual aid agreement say any of that? This allows that to happen, right? For the first time, state government within New York State, the local municipalities, are going to mirror the fire service mutual aid plans so that you can call a neighbor and ask for assistance. Machinery, supplies, personnel, and how it's reimbursed and who's responsible for what is now clarified in the law. It says who's responsible for what. All right, previously that didn't exist. So if you send a $250,000 dump truck to your neighbor and something happens to it, who fixes it? And I don't think you want to get into an argument over that and destroy relationship. So this establishes that particular piece of it clearly up front before the event. All right? Like I said, it pretty much follows the state fire mobilization mutual aid plan, which every fire department in this county is a member of, as well as every county in New York State is a member of. So if you have questions about mutual aid, you can talk to your local fire chiefs or one of the deputy coordinators that can help you with it. Here's what it basically is telling you about the cost factors. And I'll just let you read it for a moment. we're saying here is the bottom bullet is saying that the municipality that provides the personnel maintains responsibility and protections for those people. The requesting jurisdiction becomes responsible for costs incurred related to real things like machinery. All right? Previously, none of this existed. So this becomes a very valuable tool as municipal government leaders, because for the first time it identifies how you're going to fund responses, recovery, and so on. Governor's authority has been extended, actually been streamlined, so that now the governor does not need to seek approvals or consult with member agencies of the DPC to take some specific actions, and in particular, suspension of statutes, rules, and regulations. It also affords the governor the ability to create temporary rules to fit a particular situation. One example is the recovery from some of the streams that had a lot of debris in them from last year. They suspended the DEC permit rule to allow municipalities to get debris out of the streams to allow the water to start flowing and reduce flooding potential. Before this, the governor had to have consultation with the DPC in order to accomplish that. Now he doesn't have to. The governor does not do this in a vacuum. He deals with response organizations like the DEC or State Office of Emergency Management to get guidance and direction on what should be done, and then he takes whatever the appropriate action is for the problem. This particular one becomes rather important to the responders, more so than the municipalities. This goes all the way back to the ice storm in the late 90s, up north, the Plattsburgh area. Everyone remember that? Mm-hmm. We had a huge issue with sending EMS personnel up there, in that they were leaving their normal home territory, and the authorities that they worked under through the medical control facilities go into an area that had different rules. And it became very difficult for paramedics to act as paramedics. This particular change in Executive Law 2B clarifies that EMTs and paramedics will have the authority to practice within their scope of training. Another big step. This is where it becomes important for you as municipal leaders. Section 24 is all about declaring emergencies. All right, how many people can tell me what the duration is without looking up there, because that's cheating? How many people can tell me how long a declaration is good for? What was it good for?
5.
Was it?
5.
I thought it was till it was rescinded.
Well, there was a lot of confusion. All right, executive order for a declaration and emergency orders were being mixed up, and everyone was saying it was 5. It's actually 30. So when you make a declaration of an emergency, it's valid for 30 days. Or you rescind it. You can end it before the 30 days, all right? When you extend it, it automatically is extended for an additional 30 days. The reason for that is every 2 or 3 days, we don't want you having to sit down and write another declaration and send it to all the different parties that need to have it and go through all that when you can have it just last for 30 days. What's been added is the state has now requested that Office of Emergency Management in Albany be notified anytime you make a declaration of emergency. They need to know about it because they're monitoring events all across the state, all the time. Excuse me. Yeah.
By whom? By whom? Who notifies them? Dutchess County?
We will.
Okay.
Yeah. Because part of the requirement is you have to tell us as well.
Okay.
All right. We provided you with forms 2 years ago, and we can send them to you again if you need them. The forms that basically it's a common form that you fill in the blanks. The fax numbers are on it, the emails are on it, so all you have to do is fill it out, send it to us, and then we notify the state for you. The state knows what's going on. Sometimes before you'll know what's going on. For instance, the supervisor of Unionville had a significant gasoline tanker accident last week, the state called the firehouse before we even got 10 minutes into our first planning meeting. They know what's going on. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I guess it all depends on how things are going for you. But the state wants to know because they extend that information out to primarily those 23 DPC member agencies, so that state police, DOT, and so on are all aware of a significant event and may be called upon for assistance. In a very short period of time, state DOT and state DEC had significant resources available to the local fire department and the town of Unionville to support the response to that particular event. They were made aware of it through this notification system. Okay? This is kind of my disclaimer, because I told you before I'm not an expert. You should sit down and talk this over with your attorneys to make sure that you have something planned and in place prior to the emergency. Hopefully you never have to do it. But given our chances, most likely at some point you will. So discuss this with your attorneys. All right, that's my disclaimer. So let's get into some of the rules. Only the local chief executive can declare a local state of emergency, cover all or any part of his or her jurisdiction. It does not have to be your entire town, village, or city. How small can it be?
Particular road, correct?
Or smaller. It can be as small as an intersection. Several years ago, there was a declaration made in one of the towns for a particular property because it was an extremely hazardous situation. The person that resided there refused to leave. The town supervisor declared a local state of emergency, issued an executive order to evacuate, and the police went in and removed the person. Why did we go that far? Because it's a threat to the responders as well. And if we can remove people from a potential flooding area or a gas leak area prior to it becoming really dangerous, this is a mechanism to do that. Declarations can be made in anticipation of. You don't have to wait for the snow to fall or the wind to blow or the trees to blow down to make that declaration. You can do it in advance. When you do make a declaration, we prefer that you do it in writing. Why? Because you're going to be real busy. And when you get real busy and somebody asks, when did you declare the state of emergency? And everybody goes, I think it was Tuesday. No, it was Monday. I'm not sure. So write it down. We'll provide the forms. Put a bunch of them in your EOC or in your desk or wherever you need to have them so that they're available. It's one page, you fill it out and you fax it in and you're covered. When you do fill it out, we want you to include the time, date, and the reason for the declaration, the area that it includes, and what you think the expected duration is. If you have no idea, don't put anything in there because how long will it last?
30 days.
You got it, 30 days. All right. You should keep copies of this. In addition to you having copies of it, we need it here, and it also needs to be sent to the state's Department of State. Does that have to be done right away? No. And if you're in the mix of dealing with some kind of local disaster, that can be accomplished at a later time. There's nothing that's going to make any drastic change in Albany to require that up there right away. We'd like to have it as soon as possible because it helps us with our planning and also because we notify the State Office of Emergency Management. Now, emergency order. What's an emergency order? This is the question answer part again.
An evacuation of an area?
Okay. In order for you to issue an emergency order, you must have that declaration in place first. It's the only way that you have any authority under Executive Law 2B, Article 24, to exercise your authorities as a municipal leader. Okay? So this becomes really important. Then we're also saying that if the emergency order no longer needs to be in effect, you can cancel the emergency order, but keep the declaration in place, okay? Only the local chief executive or person authorized to act on local chief executive may rescind a local state of emergency. What that means is the person that wrote it should be the person that rescinds it. We recognize that after about 8, 10, 12 hours, you may not be able to function. You're going to go home and maybe a deputy supervisor or deputy mayor or someone else is going to assume your roles during that time. That person is extended the same exact authorities as the executive when that executive is not available. Okay, so it's not one person and only one person, right? When you cancel the order, it needs to be in writing just as it was when you had issued it, right? And again, the basic data that we want, time, date, all the things pertinent to the cancellation. So why do we do this? Well, one of the biggest reasons, it provides you as municipal government leaders some additional authorities and powers that you don't normally possess. For instance, declaring a curfew. Is that important? Yeah, right? Protective measures, controlling traffic, prohibiting ingress, egress into an affected area. If you have a flooded area and your police department, fire department, public works are working to evacuate people or excavate roads or fix broken pipes or whatever, do you want the public in and out of there? This is a mechanism that you can put in place to stop it. One of the single biggest advantages of this is if you write to make a declaration and issue an emergency order saying unnecessary travel on the roads is not recommended. We can't say prohibited. Why? Why can't you say prohibited? Unenforceable, right? Talk to your police agencies. Tell them that we're not going to let anybody drive on the roads today. It happens. It happens. Yet when does it happen most? Snowstorms. We'll tell people, we've declared an emergency, we're issuing an executive order, you can't drive on any of the roads. How many people have received phone calls from the guy that says, I didn't go to work today because the town supervisor said I can't drive on the road? We get dozens of those phone calls. Dozens of them. And people say, I need a letter saying that you told me I couldn't go to work. Right? However, if you have a particular road that's been washed out, it's just not safe to travel on, and you put the typical road closed, sawhorse type barrier, those types of things, and issue an executive order that says you shall not drive past the roads that are marked closed, and somebody does, are you protected? Yeah. Absolutely. There were 2 examples that I'm personally aware of where that very thing happened and somebody decided, oh, they don't know what they're talking about, I'm going around. And they destroyed their car because they went in a culvert that was about 20 feet down. They destroyed their car. And then they tried to blame the municipality. Well, because they followed this procedure, they were able to say, whoa, wait a minute. It was clearly marked, it was done correctly, the emergency declaration was created, and the order was in place. How are we wrong? And they weren't.
And the opposite of that is accurate as well, that in many cases a municipality will wish to close a road because of an emergency, but didn't declare an emergency and issue an emergency order. Therefore, you don't have necessarily the full force of law to enforce those situations. This protects you in that regard.
And just a point of clarification, we're not talking about the time when we need to close a road for a half an hour because of an auto accident or something like that. I mean, that's just common sense that police, fire, and EMS will do that as part of their duties. And the primary reason they do that is to keep it safe, not only for them, but also the traveling public. All right, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the long-term event where there's significant damage, significant impact. Okay? Prohibit the sale of alcohol and firearms. You think those two things go together well? Establishing shelters, medical shelters, alternate care sites. Alternate care sites are becoming a very popular topic, not only locally but around the nation, in that where do you send people to take care of them? And how do you support those efforts? So this is part of that whole type of thing. Suspending local laws, no parking on the street, or whatever it may be, something that you need to get rid of for a short period of time to make things work better for you. Requesting other assistance, whether it be from your neighbors, from the state, or even higher level than that. So, when? Well, basically when the situation either presents itself or appears to have the potential to create significant issues for you as local government, right? In anticipation of. We tell you that we're going to have a hurricane in 3 days, and you know that you're going to have problems with flooding area, or you want to establish sheltering, that type of thing. You can declare ahead of time and then issue the emergency orders as the need arises for whatever the particular situation is, right? So again, just some basic examples, and you've all seen them. I put this in here because I can't stress enough that you have to make that disaster declaration before you can issue emergency orders. It's very important, okay? That's the last time you see it. Will a declaration help in getting assistance from the state? Yes. Short-term answer, yes. How does it help? Because in the word declaration of an emergency or disaster declaration, however you want to phrase it, means a whole lot when we talk to Albany. We say the towns of such and such and the city of and the village of have all declared emergencies based on the event that's going on here in Dutchess County. That adds a whole lot more weight to a municipality. Says, yeah, it's snowing, or yeah, it's raining, maybe a little bit of flooding. You understand that the magnitude of the phrase gets a lot more attention at the state level, all right? How many people think you have to make a declaration in order to be eligible for FEMA reimbursement? Anyone?
Yeah, that's it.
No. Not at all. And I'll talk about that at the very end. When we have that declaration, what happens is, and because you tell us and we tell the state reports to the governor. The governor is very much in tune with what's going on around New York State when there's significant events. The governor will essentially say, okay, whatever state resources are necessary, we're going to make available to those municipalities. And they'll call and offer whatever services we're looking for on your behalf. All right, local emergency orders can be issued only if there is a state of emergency in effect pursuant to section 24. I said that already. Sorry. We did all that. All right. Did all that. All right, local emergency orders must be written. Why?
Record.
What about the challenge? Well, the town supervisor said you couldn't drive on that road. Really? I didn't hear him. But if you write it, does it become part of the permanent record for that particular event? So protect yourselves, write it down. Include the time, the date, they take effect, reason for all that stuff that's up there. We talked about it. However, you do have an obligation to publish it. Again, just like notifying the Secretary of State, you don't have to do it right away. How do you publish something at 2 o'clock in the morning in the local media? What can you do? Okay, you're on the right track. How many people have web pages? Is that a great way to notify the people in and around your community that there's a problem and you've declared a state of emergency or limiting travel, whatever the case may be?
If you
So,
have power.
if you have power, yeah. All right, so, but there is a requirement that it has to be published.
Bill said he'd read them on K104.
Bill?
Sure.
Send them all to Bill. Again, local emergency orders can be terminated any time by the legislative body. Local emergency orders must be executed in triplicate and filed 72 hours. There's that requirement, 72 hours. So if it happens today, you have basically 2.5 days to get it to the clerk and the Secretary of State. If they're extended, they can be refiled. We gotta get past this. All right. This bottom bullet here, emergency declaration gives greater legal protection and immunities for local chief executives and local emergency officials when making decisions and taking action during that disaster. That becomes important for you because when you start to do things to protect your town, you have to have something behind you to make that valid. This is what does that. For instance, if you need to go out and buy $8,000 worth of sand, is that above the required bid limit? Do you have to seek competitive bidding? Not if you do this. Okay, so that's one of the things that this will afford you. What about the county? Can the county declare a state of emergency in your municipality? Yes, they can. All right, typically that's not going to be happening without some kind of discussion with local officials to make sure what is being done is for the good of everyone in your municipality and maybe around it. Evacuation orders. Again, in Unionville, there was a need to evacuate a neighborhood. However, the town supervisor did not declare a state of emergency simply because it wasn't a mandatory evacuation. It was strongly recommended that people leave the area, but there was no declaration required because everybody said, that smells like gasoline, I'm leaving. All right, it was a common sense type thing. However, going back to that same story I talked about, the mandatory evacuation of that one home, this will allow you to do that. That sometimes the on-scene responders, your police, fire, and EMS people will become your eyes and ears and more or less the guiding disciplines for you to say, yeah, we need to evacuate. So use the resources that you have. Okay, question? None?
In the one case, I thought I heard you say that Dutchess County would notify the state, and then recently, it seemed to me the municipality was notifying the state.
The Secretary of State. The municipality has an obligation to notify the Secretary of State. When you declare a state of emergency, we want to know about it here in this department because we have the direct relationship to State Office of Emergency Management, and that's what gets the things moving. Okay? I want to spend 2 quick minutes on the FEMA declaration process, and then we'll go to the EOC. Is that all right, Dana?
Yeah, you guys okay with that?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, yes.
Okay. In order for a declaration to be achieved anywhere in New York State, the county becomes the lowest level of government entity that FEMA looks to. They don't look at individual towns, villages, and cities. So when we have a significant event, what my office does is sends requests to you asking for an estimate of your cost incurred for this particular event. You send me your best estimate of what you've spent. I put all that together. We send it as a county application to New York State. There's 2 numbers that have to be met. The first for Dutchess County is about $930,000 in cost incurred by local municipalities as well as Dutchess County. The second number is New York State has to demonstrate $25 million in costs directly related to the event in order to be qualified for a federal declaration. Okay? The Stafford Act is the guiding document for the federal government. The Stafford Act dictates that the FEMA response, financial response to a declaration is 75% of whatever was submitted. the state has elected to contribute an additional 12.5%, meaning that your particular local share is 12.5 cents on every dollar that's spent. You're going to get 87.5 cents back for every dollar that you spent. The most recent storms, the governor has assumed the local 12.5% as well. So it's a 100% reimbursement. Why do I tell you this? Because we have some agencies, municipalities, who are hesitant to submit their costs because they think it's insignificant. Every single dollar counts towards that submission. And not you in particular, don't take it personal, but a local municipality that says, it's only $2,000, we're not going to submit it, may be the difference between successful and unsuccessful request for declaration. Okay? Questions on that? No? Great. All right?
You all second?
Yep.
Well, if you would follow me, we're gonna take you through the emergency operations center, get out of upstairs in here.
This way, and then gotta turn that, it's like twisting it.